can you tell me why you thought it was important to write this white paper on ethics in AI?
Yeah, I think it was really a culmination because we could see that the topic of AI was increasing and increasing rapidly. And together with that, so that was with the available technologies, right? Across the board, across all industries. But then we could see the regulators sitting up and now regulating. So the AI Act in Europe came about, the White House brought about their regulation. And so the topic of regulation was really becoming important, again, across industries. What we didn't really see was a focus of AI regulation within nutrition specifically. So most of the concerns regarding the AI were around data privacy. It was around, identifying or misidentifying individuals, things like that. But there wasn't really anything around nutrition. And so for us, with the number of new launches and companies incorporating AI into their solution, it obviously has an impact on society because everybody needs to eat every day. And so nutrition really was, I think, over the last few years, in the context of AI, lower on the agenda or a lower priority. And so we identified that actually nutrition is important. And if we are going to raise awareness about more people adopting digital tools, that they should also be aware of the importance of the role that AI plays and how AI is being incorporated into nutrition. And of course, again, when we talk about personalized nutrition, we know that behavior change is important. And without behavior change, people will not, stick to the recommendations that they are given. And so there was nothing on behavior change either. So you can't really have one without the other. And so we thought this is really an area that needs a specific focus just on the AI aspect at that intersection of nutrition and behavior change. And we didn't see any of the big organizations coming out with a specific guidance on the topic.
So you jumped in. Very good.
So we jumped in because we are not the kind that needs to, wait. And we also feel like, well, we are on the ground. We can see it unfolding, in front of our eyes. And that's why it's so important. And I think if we don't raise awareness, then, it will come, but it might become too late. And so we thought doing it now, while it's hot, while it's topical, while the regulators are sitting up, listening and looking at different industries, that we should jump in and raise or ring the alarm really early.
Yeah, and I was actually pleasantly surprised that it was on the ethics of AI in nutrition and personalized nutrition, and not, let's say, on the effectiveness or how to make a business model on AI. Can you explain why you chose that subject? Because I mean, AI is tried to be applied. I know they all try to apply AI now in their business.
Yes,
that could also be a good topic. Why did you choose the ethics route?
That's an excellent question, and the reason I feel is that we are not really at the effectiveness level yet. Yeah. We don't really have good evidence yet to show what AI system or the effectiveness of AI on health and nutritional outcomes per se, simply because we don't have standardized data that we use. We don't have an idea of what are the right variables to use for specifics. Because personalized nutrition is really still early when you think of everybody is trying to find their business model. That is the focus on what do consumers really want and what is the ideal solution that will help consumers. So I don't think we are at efficacy yet. However, if you're going to train a model, you need to know why and how you are using the data sets already to train the AI system. And that's why I think ethics is more important right now. We will get to efficacy later, but the ethics is important, because if we are just going to pull out our smartphone and believe what the AI is telling us, nobody's really asking questions. Hey, where did this data come from? So the ethics actually precedes the efficacy, and that's why we focus on the ethics first.
Yeah, interesting. I always say that for a good personalized nutrition scheme or a good personalized nutrition service or product, it's really important to have a basis in trust and transparency. I think that this really aligns with that idea. Would
Totally.
you agree?
Totally. And this is, if we don't have the ethics correct, we will never get to trust, because if we just believe what we read, but hey, this doesn't apply to me at all. This, it doesn't apply to my lifestyle or my environment or my, physiology or whatever. How can we expect people to trust it? And both from a consumer, but also from a healthcare practitioner point of view. So I totally agree with that.
Yeah, and I mean, one of the interesting things with AI is it is most often a black box approach.
Yes.
Data going in, AI will always give you an answer. At least, with let's say that if you ask ChatGPT anything, they will always give you an answer. If you use a lot of data and go for deep learning or go for any other AI technology, it always gives you an answer.
Yeah.
So I've always been a bit skeptical of using AI technologies for personalized nutrition, because inherently it's very difficult to get out of that black box problem, meaning that there's a lot of data going in and you can kind of control the data and make it very ethical. But the answer that comes out, you can never really track back where it came from. Yeah. So how do you see the use of AI's, let's say, black box system for personalized nutrition, if you look at it through the lens of trust and transparency?
Yes. And I think, again, we are so early in the game that I think when companies initially want to come onto the market with a solution, they're very protective of their data, right? Yeah. It's like, it's my customer, it's my IP, it's my way of analyzing the data, and therefore I'm not going to share it. I think as we move forward, already we can see that without having transparency and without also data sharing or integrating with other open data, for example, we will never get to a point where the quality of the product or the solutions we have on the market are going to be of a high grade or high quality. And so I think as we move, as the market evolves, the regulation will stipulate that people will have to be more transparent about the data, and that it needs to have human oversight, that scientists and researchers need to be able to analyze and understand how those algorithms were developed. So I think right now we are still early, where people are just holding on to their data. But as we are looking more towards AI to improve efficacies in healthcare systems, for example, you cannot have a black box system where you don't have no idea where the data comes from. So I think we will get there. I don't think we are there yet. But if we're going to, work towards trust and transparency, it's going to be inevitable that the black boxes will need to become more open boxes. Maybe not completely open, but partially open, so that people can actually understand where. And of course, I think we also mentioned in the white paper that this concept of a data label. So like we have on food labels, you have your breakdown of your protein, fat, carbs, micronutrients, that if we have some kind of a data label where people can actually see, okay, this has been checked by this organization or a specific body. This is the data that has been used. It was tested on humans in this specific location. Then you have some kind of a level of transparency, which is a hybrid of being a black box and having complete open data. And that's where I think the market will move towards, and will be at least some kind of a solution.
And do you see some kind of a body that would regulate or check that, or how do you see that?
Yeah, this is always interesting, right? Because we don't have that yet. No. What we do see now is that there are centers that is a combination of, or I can't remember what they call now, AI centers, where it's a public private body that can actually, there are hubs in specific countries where they can actually regulate or at least go over, and I think TNO is one of them. But these kind of places will be important, because I think having big centers is going to create a bottleneck. But if you have some places where there is domain expertise together with AI expertise, together with, some kind of a standardization, that's where I think it will be important. I think I am not sure. Of course, for Qina, we are working now towards looking at developing some kind of a model so that companies, both on industry and practitioner level, can at least identify, okay, there's some kind of a level of transparency and trust here. But like I said, nutrition is lower on the list. I think it'll get there. But right now, I have no idea from a big organizational point of view who is taking that role on.
No, because I mean, there have been some endeavors into that direction, for instance, by CRISPR, that kind of had a scientific board to allow certain personalized nutrition operators onto a platform, etc. You could think about a similar structure for AI, but it's always going to be bottleneck and difficult. And I also hope that the consumers themselves will have some way of, finding out and getting to know how ethical or how good their personalized nutrition company is without, let's say, an external body.
Exactly. I totally agree with you. It needs to come from both sides, because already we can see consumers are, less trusting of science, less trusting of healthcare professionals, less trusting of so many different things that we don't want to get to a point where we take control away completely and say, okay, well, because we say it's good. No, it's not.
I don't really believe that's
no.
future.
No, exactly.
Good way of dealing with that.
Yeah, they need to be able to make a decision on their own, but also have the access to make, and if they say, okay, I trust your recommendation, but I also have the option to dig in deeper if I want to. That's where we're at, for sure.
Absolutely. It's always, there may only be, 0.01% of the people doing that, but I mean, it's for that 1% that you really need your game to be on top,
exactly
A level, because they will, perhaps ask you difficult questions, etc. Coming back to training the systems, we do see some companies now that train their AI systems with really specific data also. Right. So training them with scientific articles on a specific subject, and then also giving feedback on which articles were used for the answer. So you do see some companies already, using specific data for AI. For training their specific AI systems for personalized nutrition. So I think that's interesting. Also, if you look at AI, it is all about data, right? I mean, that's the cork that keeps everything afloat, or whatever you want to call it. So what's your idea on that data? So how much do you need? Where do you get it from? Can you share a little bit on that?
I mean, this is AI. Exactly. So we have the large language models now, and now it's moving to this small language models that you are talking about, where it's very niche, very, very specific. But I think when we look at these large language models that companies are now using to kind of create recommendations on data provided, like submitted by the user, but is also available, like where you are right now, what the weather is like, and things like that. And so what we just don't always know is we know what kind of information they use to train the data. What we don't know, especially when it comes to nutrition, is how honesty is of course an important one. Like, how honest are people with kind of logging their data? How frequently are they logging their data? The kind of how accurately are they logging it? And so that can be a challenge. But I do see that people who are developing AI systems, it's in a very traditional approach. So they're looking at age, they're looking at gender, they're looking at, where you live, for example, how old you are. They're looking at, what are you writing in your food diaries. What we don't have very good insight into is what are these social determinants of that individual. That doesn't normally get incorporated. So where are you living? What kind of community are you living in? What is your access to healthcare? What is your access to fresh fruit and vegetables? How many people are actually living in your household? What is your what percentage of your income is spent on food, for example? Those are very important aspects of health. And then the other area is looking at some of this very good research at looking at what are the psychological traits, how motivated are you, how digitally literate are you, how nutritionally literate are you, how health literate are you. None of these things are captured in the current systems that we have, because most of the systems are aimed at people who are already digitally literate, who already have disposable income, who are already wearing a Fitbit and or a smartwatch. And so those are then the data sets that drive the AI systems, whereas the gap is actually the things that really drive health and where we want to see the outcomes. And that's where the ethics comes in. So we need to make sure that if we are going to develop these AI systems using specific data sets, these data sets need to be highly representative. They need to be from a very, very inclusive kind of population. So all the big studies that have been done, Food for Me, Predict, they are all North European, North American, 95% white. That is what driving. And so if you look at that, the current systems, those are the data sets that are available. So that's what we're going to train the AI. And we are perpetuating the exact same biases that we have in existing research. And that's where we need to be really mindful of, so that the AI systems on purpose look for better training data sets. And that can only happen if there are other people on the team who have a completely different, background in science, or come from a different culture, background, ethnicity, and making sure that all those checklists are checked off, and that gets included in the training sets. And that's where our challenge is at the moment.
But also, that's one of the challenges, is to have people that actually ask for better data sets, or to have better data sets incorporated.
Exactly.
But isn't the biggest problem that the availability of such data sets? Because if they're not there, they're not there. Where do you get the data that you actually need to train a system?
Exactly. This is where it's important. So we have what we have right now. But moving forward, we need to make sure that whoever is funding research, or if you're wanting to create your own digital study, that you are proactively already have it in your mind that this is the training set, the representative training set that you want to create. So that's why I say we are very early in looking at very big trials that are diverse or whatever. We just don't have it. But the challenge now is to create those data sets. And then the second thing is, okay, if we're going to look for those data sets or create the data sets, who is then analyzing the data sets? Like, how are you analyzing them? And then we get to another point. So there are so many different, checkpoints that we need to that we need to be aware of, and that we need to have, as part of the discussion of ideation or creation of new products, when we are thinking about creating AI systems. And that's where I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done. It's not going to be in a month or a year even, but
absolutely.
And it's not going to happen all at once. But that's why if we have some kind of a framework that says this is what we need to be looking at moving forward, at least we have a starting point.
Yeah. And also I think it will be really important for consumers, but also for the business operators, to have some kind of a disclaimer, so that they actually know which data sets were used.
Correct.
So for whom this AI advice is suitable and for whom it is not.
Exactly. Because at the moment, it's who's on the website, right? What does it look like? That's really what it's about. And what health goal maybe do you want to reach? That is about it. Nobody really knows how those data sets were created, how that algorithm was created.
And now we've been talking about, let's say, existing data and using that to generate some kind of an advice or some kind of an insight. But a lot of companies that I've also talked to, they want to use their own generated data to do AI, basically. That's I think also really interesting. So what do you see there as a development? And also, what do they need to be able to do that?
Yeah. So I think it's a great idea if you have your own data. But if you're going to attract people, all people who are willing to pay $400, $500, $600 for a product, guess who's going to guess what's driving your algorithm, So, and I think this is where it's important, again, where we look at what is your mission? What is the company mission? Is the mission really that you want to help people towards their health? Or is it that you want to help a certain group of people towards their health? Maybe they're already healthy. They just want to,
and also, what's your overall goal, your
Exactly.
North Star, whatever. But you also have to make money. So you have to have a business model. You have to have people paying
Exactly.
you.
Exactly.
So,
So I think and I see a lot of companies doing this now, actually, is looking at, okay, we need to run a business, but we have services for different levels of people who are at different stages,
yeah,
right? So whether it's education, at least you have that kind of insight into who cannot afford my high tier product, but is now motivated and engaged in their health and wants to learn the basics. Yeah, start there. You also get that data. That is very interesting, and that can also help you. But if you are only costing, if you are only driving, the higher end, then that's what will drive your algorithm. If your mission is we want to make it accessible to all, like what we're all continuously saying,
yeah,
then make it accessible to all and make sure you capture the data of those groups of people as well.
yeah.
That's why I think it's really important.
Absolutely. And also, I think what a lot of businesses underestimate, and I'm curious to what you think about that, is how much data you actually need to
Correct.
feed, let's say, a
Yes.
AI system that's relevant. Otherwise, it's just statistics or basically looking at the data on your
Exactly.
Excel. Right? If you have like 100 or 1,000 clients,
Yeah.
it's not going to do much in AI. So, I mean, that's also something I think that
Yeah.
people
And
underestimate.
exactly. It's so important what you're saying, because number one, companies don't realize it, and then the AI then magically analyzes it and comes up with an answer. Yeah.
Always, yeah.
So unless you can unless you have built this AI system that continuously incorporates new data, you need to recheck the algorithms. You need to be able to input new scientific research or new data of the individual, because of course, if they're going to act on the information, you're going to adopt new habits, and that then needs to be fed in biological, personal data, behavioral data. All these different things need to be fed in or used within the AI system to continuously feed, because otherwise it cannot be a static system. But if it's also not updatable, then you're also sitting with another problem. So that's,
Yeah.
I think, yeah, I totally agree. You need a lot of data, but you also need to get back quality insights and quality data to be able to say, this is good, this is not useful, and continuously improve it in that way.
Absolutely, because that is in the end, let's say, also the model of personalized nutrition is to measure something, to do something with that information, kind of make some
Yeah.
reason, some sense out of it, and then give an advice, right? So this
Yeah.
what TNO always used to call the sense, reason, act model of personalized nutrition, to which I
Yeah.
always added that you also should have the interaction back to, okay, what have I learned, from the
Exactly.
advice that I've given to my consumer? Did
Yeah.
he or she like that? And how can I use that information in the sense part?
Yeah.
And I think also looking at that sense, reason, act, and also the interaction. If we look at the sensing part, so gathering data basically and gathering insights on consumers, where do you see AI there in that sense part? Where do you see that making sense most, or what kind of technologies do you see being used there, or you should see used there?
Yeah, I think the most important one, to me anyway, without a doubt, is capturing the food part, because
Food intake part.
the food intake part and matching that with the food composition part.
Yeah.
And that's what we don't have good insight into. So it's all on the stage of the food composition databases, for example, like which ones are used. At the moment, we know it's two main ones, always.
Yes, USDA, yeah.
Always. So that's already number one. Yeah, that's already problem number one. Problem number two is, how much do we actually know about the nutritional value and nutritional composition of that actual food? Yeah, how often was it updated depending on soil degradation or new manufacturing processes?
Yeah.
We don't know. And so what we are essentially doing is say, okay, we have the food composition, and now we cannot accurately tell you what to do unless we know what you like to eat, what you eat, how you prepare it, what time all these different things are really important. So I think in terms of image recognition, being able to capture a picture of the food you eat, has a huge impact because people do not log what they eat. Yeah,
No.
they do not log what they eat. It becomes a problem on day 2. It's not even, we're not even talking about a week or a month. On day 2, people do not log accurately. They may log, but they might log once a day. They might log half the meal. They might log what they want. And so you do have, you do have that.
It's a big problem. I know I've worked with the University of Wageningen a lot, also studied there, and I mean, when they want to do a nutrition trial there, and they actually want to know what people eat, there's only one solution. They give them everything. No, they give them everything. They give them they recently did a study 3 times 3 weeks. They gave them everything they needed to eat for those 3 weeks. Every snack, every bottle of water, bottle of juice, the fruit, the vegetables, the recipes, everything. That's the only way you can kind of make sure, even then, because they'll go out and have a snack or whatever. But that's the only way.
You have to give it to them and lock them in the room.
Yeah, indeed. Extremely difficult, extremely hard to do. It's the only way, because with all of the other methods of measuring or asking about food intake, you get to about 70% of their intake. You really don't know what's going on.
It's really hard. It's really hard. And then the other thing is then you kind of have an idea maybe of what they eat, or people need to input their own recipes, and then they go, yeah, I had a quiche, but actually, you know what? I'm just going to put a pizza because pizza came in like at the top of the list. So that's much easier. And so it's completely inaccurate. And so I think that is one of the biggest opportunity. So whether it's voice logging, whether it's image logging, and I know it's not perfect, but at least if people can talk into it, then at least you have a better idea of what did they eat, rather than having nothing, having no idea.
And also there, I can definitely see the advantage of AI and of using a lot of people. I'm actually now involved with a small trial, I think, in Munich, in Germany. Also, indeed, making pictures of your food, and then actually a panel of people that are also involved. I may also have to do that as a volunteer or anything. They will have to score that picture. But I think that this is this. I think I still have to do it, but probably it's something like, I estimate that these kinds of ingredients in it, this kind of composition. I actually heard a story once of a startup that did food recognition with cameras. And instead of having a true AI system, they actually sent the picture to Indian dietitians, where they quickly looked at it, filled it in, and then sent it back, as if it was, let's say, a AI, but actually under the hood, it was just real people looking at it. And then if you do it often enough, it's like with this CAPTCHA, checking all the boxes with the traffic lights. And at some point, people will help the system learn and recognize it. But it's still be very difficult, because if you show them a bowl of soup, you don't know how much fat is in soup, etc. So I mean, it's definitely not going to be perfect. It's going to be easier for restaurants, of course, because then you have a
then you have a standardized recipe. You know where they buy the food products from. So I think, and AI has a lot of potential, but I think when we look at I don't know, sequencing technology or those biological data, there is some kind of a certainty in that. We have a range, we have some kind of, there's calibration, but when it comes to food intake, like
there's so much variability, so much degrees of freedom. Absolutely.
It's a mess. And then you think, you get this beautiful AI solution that you have on your phone. But if you really think about it, you think, hang on a minute, how did it come up with that recommendation? So that's what I think, the white paper is there to think, how are you going to explain to people how you use what they log to then come up with personalization, or how do you use that information to drive the algorithm to recommend foods? Because if you don't know, then it's okay if you don't know, but just be transparent that that it's not 100%, rather than selling it as this is the panacea of all your problems. And I think that's where the ethical part comes in, about transparency and accuracy. So food assessment,
food intake, and if you think about, let's say, measuring all kinds of biomarkers, where do you see the use of AI there?
I mean, the biomarkers are excellent, because you can match that against the let's say the food intake and the behavior. So I think that gives a a very tangible and objective marker that people can connect to. So a lot of times people say, well, I didn't feel anything, or I saw what it did, and now all of a sudden I have a score. So now I can act on it. Now I know where I am and how I did. And that objective kind of score is where the biological feedback can provide a measure or some kind of data point for people to make that behavior change. And I think that is really important. Just telling people cook 5 meals a day, 5 meals a week, so what? How do I know that I'm on the right track? That's where the biological information can be a real value add. So yeah, I think it's important.
Yeah, it also brings us a little bit to, let's say, if you go from sensing to reasoning, because that's already a little bit reasoning, linking the biomarkers to outcomes and then giving feedback.
Yeah.
In that reasoning part of personalized nutrition, where do you see the best use of AI? Which technologies do you use, or do you see that is
like how what do you?
Yeah, so it's like, if you've got your personalized nutrition, so you've got a lot of data.
Yeah.
And with that data, you have to do something. So
Got
which
it.
AI technologies do you
Yeah.
see are going to be used or will be used or
Yeah.
are used now in that
Yes.
reasoning area of personalized nutrition?
Yeah. So I mean, machine learning is probably the most obvious thing I see, because what you need to do is use a data set and then learn, see, this is the starting point, and then see from the user, is that really what happened, or do you need to then learn from the system and give a different kind of advice? That's basically where
and I think actually that, I mean, before machine learning, there's probably just simple statistics first.
Yeah, could be.
Which is not AI perhaps, or some people do call it, but I mean it's probably just also very old-fashioned stuff.
Yes, and I think it's probably more reliable, I would say, because you know which statistical methods you've used and how you created your decision trees or whatever. But that at least you can refer back easily and say, like, maybe in these studies they they took a similar approach. Whereas with AI, it's more dynamic. It's continuously feeding back. And then it depends on what data are you continuously feeding back on, or what do you need to add to create that feedback. And so machine learning is really important. But then you have these other things, like we talked about the food assessment part, as well as looking at computer vision, for example, that you also need to. Then we have now natural language processing, which is way more, I would say, used in combination with machine learning, because now people can use their natural way of speaking. So they do the voice logging, for example, or they keep their food diary, or how they chat to their coach, for example, online. All these data points can then be used to then feed the algorithm to say, okay, this is now the direction, or this is now the stage of behavior change that they are in. So let's, support them in this way. So there are different technologies that are used. And I think a common misconception is that there's just one AI technology. Like AI is a composition of different technologies. So we already use machine learning, natural language, computer vision, in different degrees and in different combinations within personalized nutrition. But the caveat is also, it's expensive. Like we said, you need a lot of computing power to be able to incorporate all these different technologies. And so that's where we're at. Where we're at.
And absolutely. That's also why I found it interesting to look at this sense, reasoning, acting, and then seeing which different AI technologies you're actually using. Because people say, oh, it's AI, but there are actually different techniques, different tools that you're using. And for the act part, so basically giving advice. I mean that kind of large language models immediately spring to mind. ChatGPT, everyone's used it. Most people in nutrition perhaps have asked ChatGPT, these are the input data, what dietary advice could you give? Sometimes it's actually pretty okay. Or give me a recipe for a group of 10, whatever. So it's actually pretty okay.
Yesterday I was playing with my kids on the World Health Organization has now come up with a chatbot, and you can ask it about healthy eating advice. So we asked it about, why should I eat almonds? Should I drink milk? How much water should I take? And the answers are great. Those kind of, for somebody who has very little nutritional, those kind of answers are great. Now, most people that we know, come with complexity. So AI is great. And now I trust advice that they chatbot because it's pulling it from reliable sources, reliable organizations, reliable science. But now I want to know, can I eat almonds with my metabolic syndrome and I'm menopausal and I only exercise and I'm overweight and my latest blood results? Now it's not so easy. And that's where we need people to question, where did you get that data from? So that's the level of the AI, and also the limitation of how deep can we then go in terms of that that chatbot, for example.
Yeah. So how do you see that for, let's say, personalized nutrition operators in the level of using AI together with human interaction? So how do you see that? How do you see that in a day-to-day business, basically?
Yeah. So right now we are at a point where kind of recommendations are generated by AI, and that can be in the form of a report, for example. It can be in the form of a metabolic score, or it can be in the form of a specific recommendation. So how some companies are integrating it is actually having healthcare professionals who are involved in developing the algorithms. So it's more at the development stage. And then you have healthcare professionals who are actually at the delivery stage, at the act stage. So they say, look at the AI recommendation and say, actually, the AI said this, but I think out of the 5 things that it told you to do, I think you should only focus on 1 because that's more representative and it's more actionable. It more fits with your lifestyle, and therefore that. Or the healthcare professionals takes all the AI recommendation, but doesn't even tell the end user that it is the AI, but actually then develops their own recommendations based on that. So there are different ways of incorporating that, I think. But what we do know is if you have the AI, of course, it's a big cost up front in terms of developing that algorithm. And then if you have the cost of the healthcare professional on top of that, then that's another cost. It can get very expensive. But we are not at the stage yet where the AI can come up with recommendations without human oversight. It's just not there. So anybody or any company, I would say, that is doing that without having internal capabilities, domain expertise within nutrition and behavioral science, they should either, get external advice, or they should start thinking internally of how they can improve or how they need to assess which checking points they are, and potentially, always have R&D on the as a priority, because unless you keep on checking back, like we said, you keep on going back to the what goes into the model, it's not going to be reliable. It's not going to be trustworthy.
So for which companies is this route interesting then, would you say?
Yeah. I mean, so the one that we see definitely is people who want to improve just their eating habits. So we're just looking at people who are more goal-oriented, and they are looking at new habit formation for prevention or to improve, to optimize their health, for example. So we are not talking about biomarkers yet. We're just talking about my preferences, what I like to eat, my skills, and what I can do. What is my time resource availability? Create me a recipe and a meal plan with my budget. Put it in a shopping cart. Have it delivered to my home, and I know what to do. That's the first one. That is using AI in a very practical way. In the next one, we have the integration of more biomarkers. So I'm doing level 1, but I also want to check now with a blood marker, cholesterol levels, CGM, any of these kind of blood tests that will help me to see, am I going on the right track? So it can now combine the biological data with your personal data, with your behavioral data, and then seeing what feedback needs to happen there, and how what is missing and what kind of coaching needs to happen to nudge you towards better behaviors or alternative behaviors. That's that other thing. And then you have the more complex ones where you have the, I would say, the very systems approach, where you have all of them combined, and that system is continuously updated. We're looking at integrating wearable data, for example, looking at your behavioral logging data, and looking at physiological data to then all make sense of that and continuously feedback. So there are companies at different levels. Of course, the systems ones are more expensive, but they have the ability to not only collect the data, analyze the data, but then provide the coaching, human and real time, like a levels. Let's say, for example, like a January AI. But then you have the mid level, which I think those are the companies that are becoming more interesting, because people are now wanting to see proof. Yeah. What is actually happening? That's where I see a lot of this this growth in terms of prevention, these DIY kits that are available in store and that you can order online. And then the smarty eating is great for people who want to get started, but most people do not want to cook a new recipe every day of the week. So I see that as a kind of it might be inspirational in the beginning, but it's just a stepping stone for you to say, okay, I'm interested, and now what's the next level? How can I cook what I'm already eating and tweak it and make it better? So AI has can be incorporated, I think, at all different kinds of, and we have all kind of different companies or solution providers within the industry that do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I also see that basically there is not a single company that's not looking at integrating or using some kind of AI technology into their business.
Exactly.
And I think most of them now are looking at least using large language models as some kind of a chatbot, because that takes a lot of time.
Exactly.
And we've seen companies obviously that kind of ask ChatGPT or some kind of another AI tool to generate an advice, and then by human hand check if the advice is okay, get some things out, but at least it saves you time.
Yes.
That's I think one of the use that you see a lot.
Yeah.
For the other things, I was wondering, to really make this AI system, based on biomarkers or etc. And I do assume that you need some, let's say, minimum size or something of the company. But I think for small companies, wouldn't you think it's prohibitively expensive to do that? Or would you say just start with it and see where it ends? Or
yeah, I think there's two different ways, because I think if you are very good at creating meal plans, recipes, that kind of thing, and you are excelling it, consumers love your interface, they keep on coming back, they keep on wanting. Why venture into biomarkers? Why not just partner with somebody who's really good at the biomarker part? So I think the opportunity for partnering is really, really high to improve the kind of offering that you're developing. Also, I think if you are incorporating biomarkers, you have to be really sure that you know what you're doing and you know what risks you are taking, because it's not just going from food all of a sudden incorporating a medical grade biomarker, because there are risks associated to that. And now you might be all of a sudden or inadvertently also stepping into a completely different regulated field. And so I think there's different things. Yes, it's nice in principle, but you need to definitely be aware of what are the risks and what are the opportunities and what is really your capability in terms of offering the quality of the advice, because it might just be better to keep them separate and keep on doing what you're doing really, really well.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think, we talked about this before. I think there's a large opportunity for a lot of personalized nutrition companies, which are usually quite small, quite niche, to try to work together, let's say, in larger ecosystems. And I definitely think that AI could help there too.
Yes.
Because it will be easier for companies to speak the same language, basically, to connect what they're doing.
Exactly. And then it comes back to this data sharing part again.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, absolutely.
So if you know what you have, and then we can combine data sets, standardize them in some way. Then you have something to use for research. You have something to measure in terms of impact. But if you are just adding on, and you actually you do a little bit here, a little bit there, you end up with a product that has no clinical efficacy at the end, or has no usability in the end, because you're just doing it for the nicety of it. But actually, what you really need to do is for the impact of it, and that's where I think we need to to think through. Companies need to think through what it is that they want to achieve.
Absolutely. I've sometimes, I mean, that is, I think, a broader problem in personalized nutrition, that because personalized nutrition companies are often started by people who are really tech savvy, they really are interested in technology, and they see all of these technological possibilities and opportunities now also with AI. Oh, we can do this, this, this.
Yeah.
I think they really should think also about the use of all of that technology for their consumers, where sometimes it's too complicated for them, or they just can't be bothered. It's the so what, you know? And I think that's really important to see, okay, what do we actually do to get advantages for the consumer, for the end user?
Yeah. No, it's and like you say, people now that AI is kind of sexy, they're like, oh, we just like slap AI onto it. Onto what? To do what?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, it's and also it should be extremely simple. I mean, that's one of the things also that we've learned from so many consumer interviews, etc. That the idea of personalized nutrition sounds really good, but then it should be extremely simple and extremely beneficial for consumers, especially, let's say, for more mass market consumers, to actually engage with a personalized nutrition service, and to keep personalized nutrition from being very top of the pyramid and very specific. You really need to make it much more simple and much more cheap and much more effective, basically. That's also, I hope, that personalized nutrition or AI can help with.
Yes. And I think if you look at this whole food as medicine movement, I think they are kind of, they're getting the model right. So you are looking at individuals who cannot afford, high-end tests or something like that, but you're working with people where the benefit is there, So people who really need it, who would really benefit from a personalized nutrition approach. So you get their social determinants, you get their biological data, you get their behavioral data, and then you get their personal data, and then you create the solution around them. So then you give them vouchers, and okay, you can buy your fresh fruit and vegetables from this supermarket, for example. But then you also get access to the education on your phone or in real time, or you can get access, you get coaching in terms of behavior from an expert. And so that all then gets pulled together by AI that then can be used to say, okay, this is really the cost effectiveness, this is the health outcomes. Then you have something. And so I think that's the way companies need to think about, more widely, which technologies and which data variables are important that are used then to train the model that you can use more widely, but can continuously be improved as you are learning yourself as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I wanted to ask finally about the framework that you've made, the Qina framework. So can you explain first, what it is, but also why you thought it was important to make it?
Yeah. So of course, I've been in personalized nutrition for a long time now. And I think when people think about personalized nutrition, it's all about, usually they say, oh, it's all about genetics. But of course, it's not just about genetics. It's about so much more than that. And I think that's kind of we need to think more broadly. And if I put my, 360-degree hat on, or if I have like my real bird's eye view, there's so many different aspects that we need to look at. So the first one, of course, and I can't probably remember all 7 of them, but the first one is around the data, which we discussed, in detail now. Like, how do you assess the right kind of data that you're going to incorporate? Where are you getting that data from? What's the quality of the data? And how do we ensure that there's some kind of level of standardization? Yeah, that's the first one. The second one is around the actual AI system. We talked about that. Is it resilient? Is it scalable? Is it flexible? Is it trustworthy? It needs to be secure, protect individuals' data. Those are standard things that really are included in all the kind of AI ethics, guidelines and things like that. Then the third one was around, the humanity of it. Now, when we come to humanity, this is a little bit softer because we know these things, but they are not translated into actual AI solutions. So do we demonstrate? How do we check for empathy? How do we identify at at-risk individuals, for example? How do we make sure that there's, inclusion and diversity in our system? So we need to be very aware of the human centricity, because in the end, it's about the person, it's personalized nutrition. It's not some random, it's about the human. So we cannot lose our humanity within the world of machines and without, all this technology. And then the other one is around, people and planet, because we know that people now increasingly select their food based on the values and the beliefs that they hold. Animal cruelty-free, sustainable sources. How does it impact the local community? All the going more plant-based, for example, environment, climate change. All these things impact. It's not just about what is my blood level or what is my weight on the scale. It's more than that. And so that is not really included. Maybe I can name one or two that include sustainability as part of the AI systems, but most don't. It's really about the biological and the personal data. And so that really needs to be incorporated. If we think about the, United Nations, the Sustainable Development Goals of businesses, some companies have told me what do sustainable development goals, what's sustainable business? So it's not really on the radar on a lot of people who are really just business driven, but we should be, because it has a social impact, it has an environmental impact, and so we need to think wider about that as well. The other one is around the organization. So how is the organization structured? Like we said, you can't just have good business, good tech, good marketing in a team. You need the domain experts. You need to think about the ethics of your solution. You need to think about so many different things. It's not just about slapping a solution together and focusing on customer acquisition. And so the organization needs to have the policies in place. They need to have the practices in place. They need to be transparent about who is in the team, how are they documenting? How can I, as the consumer, go in and find out about your privacy policy, about what is your policy around recruitment, for example? And all these different things are important, because people are going to start digging in more and more as people become more skeptical and critical about companies and how they make their profits, essentially. So that people and planet part is really important. And I think the one that is kind of different is the education part. And so the education part, I've seen, again, when we think about capabilities, is that the medical healthcare professionals don't have enough nutrition training. We know that. That's a fact. It's not new. We also know that a lot of nutrition domain experts are not always involved in the ideation part of AI systems. They are really at the end, at the act part in delivering the nutrition advice, whereas actually they hold a lot of domain expertise in terms of what needs to go into those AI systems and how do you do it responsibly, how do you do it ethically, how do you measure social impact. So they should really be, but then once you incorporate it at the ideation stage, do they have the skills to think about design thinking, for example, thinking about culinary medicine, for example? There are so many behavioral science. We have practical skills in terms of motivational interviewing, but that doesn't apply to AI if you're delivering something digitally. So it's that whole concept of what are we training the next generation to have in terms of knowledge and capabilities, and what should the ones who have the tech and business capabilities, how do we get them to always also think wide in terms of the nutritional science aspect, the food science aspect, to be able to combine that and understand where people come from, why do they hold that perspective? Because all perspectives are important, but not all perspectives are actionable. But if you don't open yourselves up to a different point of view, then you will be creating more solutions for the very healthy and wealthy who do not benefit. And that's where I think the education part is also important. So training in diversity, inclusion, training in terms of ethics, training in terms of design thinking, and we are looking now at behavioral design thinking. We need to do more. What are the impacts of AI? How does it even work? Both consumer part, both also on the practitioner part. So I think those are important things that we need to think about. And I think, did I miss any of the pillars?
There were 7, and you were at 6 now.
Which is the 7th one?
Yeah, I have to check.
Is it data? No. Is it privacy?
Regulation.
Regulation. Yeah. So again, regulation. When we think about personalized nutrition, it's not just should you have more almonds. It's more than that. So if you have a healthy individual who just wants to eat almonds, that's great. But as soon as you move into like, do you have a medical condition? Then you're moving into medical nutrition advice. And so that is a regulated area. So we're thinking about nutraceuticals. That's a regulated area. You can't just put on any claim that you want on your product. Yeah. If we think about data and privacy and how you're handling data, that's another different regulation. Are you using a device like a CGM, or are you wearing some kind of using some other kind of device to gather that biological data? Now you're in medical devices regulation. So we think about personalized nutrition as, everybody deserves to have access to information and just, and get personalized recommendation. Yeah, but there needs to be accountability and there needs to be responsibility. And if that is going to happen, and for consumers to trust that the AI system is giving them accurate advice, the companies need to abide by the regulation. And in all honesty, the regulators themselves struggle to keep up with the rapid advances in AI, never mind the rapid advances in nutrition and how that incorporates with nutrition and behavioral science. So that's why I think those 7 pillars are important, because you may have 1 or 2, but you need to think about and at least discuss internally, where are we with the others and how can we improve? And when the regulators catch up, that we are already there. And that's where I think it's important.
Good. And can you give an example of how you would apply, let's say, this framework for a company if they come to you for consulting, or if they come to you for help in their setting up their AI system?
Yeah. So for us, the first point will also always be like, what are they trying to achieve? Yeah. What are they really, what are they trying to achieve from a business perspective, but also what are they trying to deliver to the consumer perspective, and why that consumer, and what is your hypothesis about that consumer? So I think always people, and you know this, people very easily and very freely throw around, we are consumer centric. When actually it's an office exercise. They don't really speak to the like, do you really speak to the consumer? Did you really identify those triggers and those struggling moments and what they really desire in terms of their outcomes? It's actually quite rare. That's what Qina does. So we can really identify what is the job that your solution needs to deliver, why and how, and what is it? What is the expectation of the consumer then? So that would kind of be the first stage. Then you look in terms of, okay, what are the ideas and that need to be incorporated in that. That could be looking at specific features. It can be looking at what is the behavioral theory behind why you want to deliver, why do the consumers want to achieve that, and then looking at, okay, what is the prototype looking at? If you have some kind of a prototype, now you look at the 7 pillars. Okay, if you're going to do that, what is the implication of that? What is the regulation that incorporates that? What is the internal capability? So you can think of the whole cycle of innovation, and that's continuous, but you need to have a starting point, and your starting point is always going to be the consumer needs, preferences, behaviors, understanding that deeply before you even go into the innovation and how you're going to achieve that. So I think this approach that we take now is a newer approach, because traditionally it was about having a focus group. I always think people will say what they want in that focus group. You're not necessarily going to get that, potentially not the quality detail, but you can combine it with focus group with interviews. But having, and we found this especially, is having a nutrition expert in combination with somebody who has no nutrition knowledge, doing those consumer interviews is incredibly important, because the person who doesn't, we come with the existing bias of everybody knows what a protein is. Surely everybody knows what fiber is. Like, no, that person will dig in and say, actually, what did you mean by healthy? You want to be healthy. And so I think with the existing solutions, there are a lot of assumptions. Unfortunately, assumptions were developed with people who were literate, like I said, savvy, tech savvy, have access to the internet, all those things. We should be diving deeper. And that's where I think now for us is combining this really face-to-face consumer insights and leveraging technology to then deliver those insights in a better way, in a more cost-effective way, that are measurable and are easy, I would say.
And where do you find consumers to do these consultation rounds with? What's your source?
Yeah. So there are different methods, I would say. We have a practitioner network, so we can use our practitioner network around the globe and say, are there people who would be interested in this? For example, you can find them online, you can find them on social media forums, you can do ads, you can do all sorts of things to attract people, but of course, even within that, you still need to screen people as well, because you need to make it as diverse as possible. But like I said, we are also early in the process, but now we can see how you can combine the two. So you have, because people lie online as well, right? So it's like okay, how can you combine what you learn, the messages that you hear, the themes that come out? Is that really true? Is that what's happened in the scientific research? Is that what happens in the interview? And how can you identify patterns and trends, both with our domain knowledge, but combining that with AI, for example, to interrogate the data? So there's different ways of combining, leveraging, but it's a combination. It's never AI by itself, I would say. But yeah, to find consumers and to find users, because it doesn't always have to be a consumer, can be just a practitioner or somebody that uses or recommends a solution. You need to be as creative and resourceful as possible.
Okay, well, those were the questions.
Thank you. That was great.
Yeah.